Okay, I'm Jacques. I'm the executive director of Wellness Kings, and I was born in Olympia, and I grew up across the street, not on the water, but near the water. And so when I was a kid, I would go down to the beach and I'd look under the rocks, and I'd go fishing like almost every day in the summer, and I'd build a personal relationship. And then when I got older, we'd go swimming and water skiing on the Sound, and so I kind of built a significant personal relationship with the Salish Sea, at least as I experienced it locally. And my dad had a boat, and sometimes we'd go up into the San Juan Islands and into the Canadian Gulf Islands and see the wildlife that was there, see orca whales. In those days, there was no Marine Mammal Protection Act, so you could get like as close as me to you to the whales, which probably wasn't a good thing, but it was certainly a thrill.
Like it is now.
And there were lots of fish to catch, so it was very exciting growing up here. And then fast forward, I studied oceanography and worked around the country and got an opportunity to come back here and work on conservation projects about 20 years ago. And I worked in various organizations, including an organization called People for Puget Sound, and then the Nature Conservancy running their Washington Marine Conservation Program and setting that up. And then I got an opportunity to work for Long of the Kings. And the reason I was excited to work for Long of the Kings is because I think they take a very practical and science-based approach to salmon management and conservation. They recognize that hatcheries are sort of a part of our salmon management landscape because we've so drastically altered the natural world in some places, but also in places where the natural world's in great shape, we should be advocating for supporting wild runs. And no matter what we do, wild runs of salmon are critically important because they support the diversity that we need in the world. So I got the opportunity to come here, work for a science-based organization, lead the organization to sort of new levels of effectiveness and efficiency, and I jumped at the opportunity. That was about 6 years ago, and the Salish Sea Marine Survival Project, which we're working on, is something that has started since I came on board.
Thank you. So you kind of touched on this in the presentation here again. Can you talk a little bit about the background of the creation of Long of the Kings?
Yeah, so Long of the Kings was started by a group of salmon advocates who thought that there might be a better way to support fisheries than the factory hatchery production that was going on at state and federally run facilities. So they said maybe we could do little projects that are more sustainable and ecologically friendly, distributed around the basin and maybe operated by private operators. And that could be another way to supplement fisheries while we wait for wild stocks to recover, or maybe releasing wild stocks from harvest management. And so it got started on Orcas Island by one property owner who had a freshwater flow on his site, a place called Glenwood Springs, that empties into the East Sound. And that has been operating successfully for over 30 years, 37 years now. And now we're to the point where we're releasing almost 1 million fish, Chinook every year from there, and we get solid returns, and it supports fisheries throughout the Northwest. That blossomed into the development of expertise in hatcheries in general. We've consulted with the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, with Native American tribes throughout Western Washington, and with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service throughout the Pacific Northwest on how to run their hatcheries better, bringing scientists in to advise them. And we're now deeply engaged in wild fish recovery as well as production to support fisheries, and then looking at science on what controls the survival of salmon and steelhead in the marine waters here in Canada.
So, can you touch on some of the connections that have with other community grassroots organizations?
Yeah, sure. So one example is, well, we work with a number of different, we have 250 partnering organizations that we've worked with since the foundation of the organization. You know, everybody from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in the U.S. and the Department of Fisheries and Oceans in Canada to a group called QUIOT, who is a local grassroots conservation group here in the San Juans. Currently, we're partnering with QUIOT, the Wild Fish Conservancy, which is another nonprofit organization in the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, to evaluate the health of cutthroat trout population, sea-run cutthroat in the San Juan Islands. So we work everything from very large, complex international programs to very localized grassroots recovery efforts. Now, Long Live the Kings does not do advocacy, other than supporting appropriations or funding for salmon recovery and management projects. We don't advocate for directly for removing dams or changing habitat or stopping development projects. We work on developing the science that would direct whether or not those are good ideas or not, and then making that available.
So when you were talking about the losing the federal funding or not the federal funds, you were talking about all of the things that for
that actually was to get the federal government to support their own scientists to work on this critically important project. And it's a very complicated situation because the federal government provides significant funding for physical habitat restoration and for hatchery management in the region. And I think their attitude from Washington, D.C. is, we ship a lot of money out to you to do salmon work on the Pacific coast. You figure out how you want to distribute that among different programs. And there's a lot of vested interest to do this other work. Even though understanding the marine survival of the system may be fundamentally necessary in order to realize the benefits of doing physical habitat restoration or hatchery reform. So it's a complex social science issue.
It leads me nicely into my next question, which is, how do you think community educational institutions are different than state, federal, or university-created or funded education?
Yeah, I think that the most fundamental difference is that these larger institutions have multiple responsibilities that are quite complex. They have competing mandates that they need to address, like providing for harvest in the case of Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, as well as responsibility for conservation of the same species that they're advocating for harvest for. So that puts them sort of in an inherent conflict. They are at the will of a separate legislative body in terms of how they get resources to do that. In contrast, small nonprofit or community groups can target very specific issues, build coalitions in order to address specific objectives, and go find funding to support that as needed. With that said, the thing that's in common is that the problems that these people are dealing with are generally intractable for both groups, very difficult to solve. And secondly, funding is always limited and generally inadequate, whether you're a small group or whether you're a large federal or state agency.
Thank you. One last question. Or even just
Can you tell me that question again?
yeah. So what do you think is the community or role in community educational institutions like Long Live the Kings?
Yeah, so generally the people there's a unique individual or personality type that starts an organization like this. It's usually somebody who doesn't necessarily respect authority completely. They have an idea, they don't assume that somebody else is going to take care of it or some existing power or structure is going to address that issue and that they need to take action. So I think that attracts a certain kind of person. I think that those people are really necessary. Sometimes they can be very difficult to work with because they're very passionate about what their interest is. They're very focused on what their interest is. They don't really care about what anybody else's interest is, but oftentimes that's what it takes to make progress on difficult issues. So I think that's critically important. I think working with them requires a certain art and skill set on the part of folks who would work with them on a regular basis and help them to be as productive as they possibly can be. But it's also exciting to see what can get accomplished by highly motivated and committed individuals with a vision.
Yeah, cool. That's it. Can I just ask you one kind of just random
Yeah,
question
sure.
to end it? What's your favorite thing about salmon in the Salish Sea?
My favorite thing about salmon is that they are so resilient, and if they're given half a chance, they will persevere. You know, you can knock them down, and they'll come back over here, and you knock them down over there, and they'll come back over someplace else. You know, they just have this burning desire to succeed, and they have made it through eons of disturbance like glaciers and volcanic eruptions and droughts, and they have survived. And so I like to model myself after Pacific salmon and try to be as resilient.
Cool. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.